Well, okay, we got more problems and silliness, so this can be incorporated as a kind of a general concept. RAR, so that would be a GCRAR, or a guck RAR. So that's the Captain's Log Star date. Went ahead and let's move this over here. No, we can't do that. Let's forget about that. And let's see, Control-Alt-H. Bye-bye. I'm trying to start a session. This is a free program. Done quite a bit of research on it. As a matter of fact, let me minimize this. Grab a folder to use. This is Mikogo, and apparently it's still reasonably popular, although apparently not that well known. And it became another product called Beam Your Screen back in 2011. Not really sure when. It's kind of hard to follow the evolution here. So Mikogo it became Beam Your Screen. And I think we have something about that down here. And now it is reverted back to Mikogo, as per information on this page. Has been merged, here we go, into our premium screen sharing solution, Mikogo. Alright, so that brought me to here, and it's probably wiped me. Oh no, it hasn't. It hasn't wiped me out yet. Well, do we see any username here? So this is Dion, last name Smith. Now I'll bet if I were to change any part of this and leave everything else the same, including the password, well, this is just this billboards the utter idiocy of folks who can't think things through, and this is abundantly obvious all across the landscape in any kind of business on just about any span. And it brings up the issue that at the velvetdoberman.com, which we'll just throw in there really quickly. Here we are talking about. Oh, that's interesting. It leaves this on the screen. I'm going to move this over to one of my other screens. I'm just going to point this out. Everything is here on the page. It's just a splash page, and this needs to be updated. But we are talking about a national television show here. So I do have some I've never quite figured out why that happens. So if I get rid of, well, I can't do that. How about that? Aha! Alright, well, enough of this. So that is why I am the Velvet Doberman, and after years and years of bumping into all of this idiocy, and it's everywhere, and beginning to propose to educators that we begin to teach something called logic in school. Not how to think, excuse me, I'm getting tangled up on my own rhetoric. Not what to think, but how to think. Think about that from that perspective. This brings up the perspective of where is the control panel for the human mind, and are we actually seated at that control panel when we begin to sally forth with some sort of an activity of any kind, any fashion, any form. Of course, we want to be operating at a formless level, and that brings up all kinds of woo-woo things, which we won't get into here. I've said this. No. The no to that question probably 500 times. There's an example right there. Somebody did not do their job, they didn't think it through, etc. ad nauseum. What was it? Etc., etc., etc. Thanks to Yul Brynner. Well, I don't see anything in these fields where it was marked originally as username. So let's find out what happens if I change this and start a new free trial. So I'm going to take all of this. This is just time wasting. It doesn't have to happen is the whole point of this. Okay, we're all here. Yay, hail, the gang's all here. And I'll put this up here so we can... Why should I register? Start a session. Well, I did. So it wants my registration information. I did all that. There it is. My name, my email. I did put in a password. And here's a phone number. Optional. Carbonite. I should check into this. Okay. Let's do it again. Let's... Yeah. So it says first name, last name, email, password, of course, phone optional. So that's what I saw when I first arrived, jumping out of my virtual vehicle, hopping out, opening the door, blasting into the reception area and saying, "Hi, I'm ready for a new account." "Oh, here, sir." Put in your first name, your last name, your email, and your password, and your optional phone, which you can see I already did. So now it's using, it's asking me for my username, so it's using me for my astronaut. LOL. And nothing is working. I've tried Dion. I've tried Dion Smith, which would be a very awkward and just not a very viable or robust transition from username to the thing called no username over here, meaning these two. Password, alright, it's still on the clipboard. We'll put it in there. And it doesn't like it. Well, alright, I'm going to send up for now. This is something I want to share with the people at Mikogo, because this looks like it might be something worthwhile to recommend to people. Hello? As someone with presumably a pretty heavy-duty following coming up relatively fast. We're closing on it pretty quickly. So that's all I've got right now. It doesn't work, and I need to contact these people and send them this little video, which I'll post on one of my servers, and they can see for themselves with their own eyeballs and hear with their own earballs why things like this are confusing. And it really comes down to this, and I'll add this as part of the RAR. RAR stands for riffin' and rantin'. The riffin' part is where I go off on a tangent to talk about other things and try to at least keep from upsetting the apple cart too much, and tying it all together in such a way that it's entertaining and makes a modicum of sense. So the riffin' part of this is very simply, as I already mentioned, this is all over the floor when it comes to people not thinking things through. But why is it happening? We have it happening in our home theater situation, for example, where we're watching a movie and all of a sudden realizing that something happened somewhere in the mid-90s, or maybe late 90s. It might have been George, what's his name, Lucas, Star Wars guy, who was so well-heeled and so influential that he was able to get into theaters and somehow hooky-dooky and snoggle people into installing a thing called Lucas Sound. That's not what I want to say here. It's a certain profile, kind of not like at all in terms of parameters, but similar to the idea of the RIAA standard for phonograph records. It's an equalization curve, meaning that you don't just listen to the audio file exactly as it was recorded. You apply a certain behavioral modification algorithm to it, so that you're hearing what someone else has decided your system should be connecting to in order to provide you the sound that you want to hear. and the dialogue, and the 5.1, 7.1, Dolby, etc. Now all these talk about over-complexification and over-engineering, as a friend of mine once coined it. So now it's like that. Lucasfilm, what the heck was it called? I'm just blanking on this. I'm going to pause the recording and look that up. This is very aggravating. Okay, here we go. Pausing. 3, 2, 1. Ah, back at you. Here it is, THX. There are also all kinds of other... Well, this pretty much makes my point for me. All over the floor. What is all this? Sound Droid. Well, actually, we could bone up on that, but some other time. Bon appetit, or I should say, bon voyage. Okay. Interestingly enough, I used to use the recording equipment from Doberman Labs. So obviously they're still in business. Wow, it's amazing, the things you can find on Google. Alright, so what was I originally talking about, trying to circulate back? I'm saying that when you can't understand excuse me, what the characters are saying, it's probably because of a number of possibilities, and topping the list is the strong likelihood of the fact that when people go into post-processing, post-production, excuse me, please, the director is there, the editor is there, they have the scripts in their hand. I mean, if you listen very carefully, you can hear the pages changing in the background. LOL, I'm just kidding. So they spend weeks, sometimes months, editing these movies, the sound. Now, THX, again, bear in mind, has changed the overall contour of the sound that you hear. If you listen very carefully to movies predating, and this is pretty random, predating, shall we say, maybe 1995. I'm not really sure where the circa is on that. But older movies, you don't have any trouble at all hearing the dialogue. Does it sound high fidelity? No, but you can hear it. Well, the problem is if you have a complex arc of the plot, or arc of a plot, then you need to understand the lines, because unless the writer is really mindful and tracking his own thought processes, there is a very strong possibility that one line in the movie is going to contain information that like an establishing shot, as they call it in the motion picture industry, that shows you what's about to come. If you watch Modern Family, for example, the TV show, there's always an establishing shot to tell you whose house we're going to be visiting with the next sequence of visuals, right? And this is all over the place. It's called an establishing shot, quote unquote. Well, if you happen to have a directional piece of telemetry, I'm fishing for the right term here, something, a set of instructions to the brain of the viewer and listener that says, okay, this is what you need to know next in order to make sense of what you're about to find out. Yes? That's what we will call that an audio establishing shot, and it could be contained in one single line of dialogue. And if the actor comes and you don't get it, sometimes that's only one that it takes before you shut the movie off and say, I can't follow this. And plots are getting more ridiculous all the time, particularly the slam bang, blow 'em up movies, where the dialogue really isn't important. Neither is the character development, because people seem to just, I don't know, want the eye candy of the, and I admit I like car chases too, so please, no emails on this. However, if it's a tender, loving movie, or a character-driven movie, or a tragedy, or any one of a number of different descriptions, you need to be able to hear every piece of dialogue. Now, I personally have a little bit of high-end loss in my hearing due to playing rock and roll in nightclubs for too many years and in recording studios. at the Phil Spector level. That brings up a whole other topic, which I could share later, but having spent quite a bit of time hanging around Gold Star Studios in Hollywood during the Phil Spector era, he was kicked out of that studio numerous times for blowing their 604E Altec monitor speaker systems, and because, of course, probably the financial factor, invited back when he came crawling in on hands and knees and saying, "Please, please, please, take me back," and the whole thing would repeat again. So yes, where was I before I derailed my train of thought? Woo woo. That's a Gerald McBoing Boing homage there. Anyone who remembers Jim Backus. So the train effect, of course. What is he talking about? The train effect. So you can't hear the dialogue, you miss the one line of dialogue, and then if it happens again, after a while you just say, oh, I can't follow this, especially if you have a little high-end hearing loss. As I mentioned, I personally have to contend with. You decide to just shut it down or just let it run, go and get a sandwich in the kitchen, and you've lost the whole reason the movie was made. Why is that? One, I'm circling back again, we've got this thing called THX, which is a different profile. It's kind of like a color palette. In motion pictures, you hear the term a color palette, and sometimes they switch it. They want to warm it up toward the middle of the picture when you're at page 75 of the script, and they want to warm you up. So all of a sudden the colors get richer. Color palette. Well, this is an audio palette. Remember what I mentioned about earlier movies, particularly some of the ones from even the late 40s. They were not using the greatest of high-tech sound transducing devices, or inducing, I'm referring to the microphones and playback, in the editing sessions and so on, and yet you can understand all the dialogue, and it still happens occasionally with modern movies, but there's something going on where it's kind of what we used to call in the voiceover industry. As a voiceover person, I ran into this term a lot. Tubby, quote unquote. It's tubby. It's just kind of the S's and the T's and the P's, otherwise known as the sibilant, with an A and T at the end, sibilants, are somehow reduced. They're diminished or attenuated for whatever reason. They're using too much de-essing, quote unquote. And so you have the compound effect of slight hearing attenuation on the part of the listener. And how many people out there do you suppose are over 45 or over 50? You see what I'm saying? This is quite in line with what I was referring to when I began recording this whole thing. Namely, that people are not thinking it through. I have a term that I I don't like using it because of what it brings up to have to deal with, but it's called short thought. Short thought, mediocrity, ineptitude, lack of training, millennialism that can figure into it as well. Basically, it's just some of the television programs that you hear. I'm thinking specifically not The Voice so much, but American Idol. Some of the mixes on the music, abominable, unfreaking believable, just abysmal. Like they grabbed somebody right out of the recording school, whatever the name of that school is, I'm blanking on it right now, and said, "Here, do this, and we'll pay you $350,000 a year," and they don't know Jack. And we won't mention Jack's last name, by the way. Family show. So there you go. What's going on with this stuff? At the very, very neck of the funnel, or shall we say the tip of the pyramid, as we view it in its upside-down position, is lack of mindfulness, lack of paying attention. Here we have these people with their scripts in their laps, remember the page-turning LOL, and they are living with this for weeks, if not months. So they know what the Dickens, the character, is saying. Maybe the writer is even there. Yes? So, but they already know. So they can apply this algorithm, this telemetric filter, which reduces the sibilance and increases the lower mid-range, and to make it feel, I suppose, more robust and high fidelity in people's living rooms, at the sacrifice of the intelligibility factor. It's called, make an acronym of that, IF. The intelligibility factor goes down the toilet because these guys who are sitting in the studio doing the post-production already know what's being said, and they may not even bother to go for the take where the director said to the actor, hey, don't mumble that line. That line is key to the understanding of this entire arc of the plot. You know, the plot point is lost. So that's all I started out to say, and I've turned this into a huge RAR. However, it has been reasonably concise compared to some of my ramblings, and I might be able to extract this and use it in some other venue, because this is critical. Not only is it critical when it comes to just watching movies. This isn't just about watching movies. It's about this whole deal here, this whole thing. Lack of ability to think things through. What is this? Oh, I was looking at the fact that Toshiba, at least at one point, was fairly bullish on this beam your screen, which is now reverted back to Mikogo. And I wanted to... Where is it on the taskbar? This is supposed to remain on the what used to be called the sys tray. Is it in here? Adobe, what's that? Oh, here it is. Okay, so we've got our alert windows back, and oh hell, I'm going to have to do some editing on this before I send it to these guys. Unless maybe the point is well enough taken that it can make a difference, which is why this is in the world, why I have devoted so much effort and intention to having this come to pass. Woof. Alright, this is the Velvet Doberman. How long have I been recording here? 22 minutes. If it were a snake, you know what. Okay, time to bring that up again, which is reverted back to its original position, of course. In other words, we don't think things through, people. We don't think of the what-if scenarios. I was just thinking about this earlier today. The what-ifs. The whiffs. What-if scenarios. The whiffs. I'll work on that and fax you the final result. So we got Alt F4, yes, on 0, 3, 2, 1, Velvet Doberman, not quite out, back slate, 3, 2, 1, 0. Huh? Alt F4. I must have hit the numeral 4.